Every 4 years, it seems like we are all saying that the election of that year is the most important and consequential of our lifetime. It always feels that way, and I bet you feel that way now, right? Well, over the years, our country has had 46 presidents, each making an impact on history in his own way. Since the Iowa caucus kicks off this year's presidential elections, it does every year, we thought it might be a good time in this hour to periodically take a look at past presidents. We begin in 1969, and the 37th president, Richard Nixon, the first president from the state of California. Chief White House correspondent James Rosen has a look back into Nixon's deep ties with the state.
In Whittier, California, in 1939, a child approaches the front gate of a stately home on Worsham Drive. Greeting the cherub is a future president of the United States, Richard Nixon, 26 years old. His Navy service in World War II and a most consequential life in politics still ahead of him. Shot by younger brother Ed Nixon, this film has never been seen before.
I started in 2009 with my research.
The film was one of many archival discoveries made by Paul Carter, an attorney and author of the new book, Richard Nixon, California's Native Son, published by Potomac Books. Nixon remains America's only president born and raised in the Golden State, and this is the first biography to treat him through the prism of his geographic roots.
Whereas Fawn Brodie and other authors wrote about how Richard Nixon was, unloved and had a difficult childhood and had a chip on his shoulder, it was quite the opposite. He was incredibly popular, incredibly well-liked, and incredibly successful, and incredibly engaged in civic activities all the way up through the period of the beginning of World War II, which he then volunteered for naval service.
Nixon met and married his wife, Thelma Pat Ryan, in California, raised their daughters there, and represented the state in the House and Senate. From there, he ascended to the vice presidency. After failed bids for the Oval Office in 1960 and the governorship of California 2 years later, Nixon finally won the presidency in 1968 and was sworn in the following January.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And it was home to California 5.5 years later that ex-President Nixon retreated following his resignation in the Watergate scandal to receive a pardon from his successor and to write his best-selling memoirs published in 1978.
If you can take a look at Richard Nixon's life in full, then you can see a broader picture of him, and you can see a real picture of the man rather than something that's looked at through the prism of Watergate.
In Washington, James Rosen, Newsmax.
Author Richard Nixon, California's Native Son, Paul Carter, joins me. Good evening, sir. And for all those who love history, it's always fun to sort of look back at these presidents. And I'm thinking, what do you think President Nixon, and obviously this is just a game of trying to think of how he thinks, what would he think about politics today?
That's a very good question. First of all, thank you very much for having me this evening. I appreciate this opportunity. And I think he probably scratched his head at where we're at today, but I can't presuppose to know what that man would think, because the gap between his knowledge and my knowledge is enough to fill the Grand Canyon.
Well, he resigned over Watergate, and we've seen so many presidents with ups and downs, to put it politely, since then, who I'm trying to think, would he have it to do over? Would he have resigned from Watergate, or was that the right decision for him?
It was likely the right decision for him, because he was a man that always took service over self. And that's what really distinguishes him from our current recent leaders, is he would look at what was in the best interest of the country. And having a president, not able to govern for an extended period of time in dangerous times with the Soviet Union and the different issues going on in the Middle East, it was a complex time that called for leadership, and by resigning, he actually demonstrated leadership.
Looking back, and of course, the only thing I have to read is the media and the books, and so that's all I have to rely on. He certainly seemed like, in addition to the scandal, Watergate, like an odd duck, so to speak. He had some peculiarities. I suppose we all do in many ways. But his trip to China in 1972, that was historic. Did that trip? What's that impact of that trip now with our relationship with China?
Well, that trip opened up China, and it brought them out of the darkness. But I want to go back to your point about him kind of being an odd duck, because that's really the fallacy of the history of Richard Nixon. And when you look at him, he had this amazing all-American life that has never really been looked at until Richard Nixon, California's native son. And I really review those early years, especially when he was practicing law and growing up in Whittier, and his service in World War II and thereafter. And rather than odd, he was tremendously all-American, and he really demonstrated this idea of service over self.
Well, maybe I'm being unfair, but I mean, I remember reading things like, in August, where he'd go into the White House and turn the air conditioning up and build a fire. And maybe, maybe that didn't happen. Maybe that was one-time deal or whatever. Maybe others do that.
I'm sure everyone has their own little peculiarities, but that's what makes us individuals. But he was a type of person that was an anti-communist all his life, but then he opened up China because he knew it was in the world's best interest to have that large country in the world scene. And he was probably the only person that could do it.
And when he did that, am I right that he did that sort of to leverage our authority over Russia, because we were in the midst of the Cold War, and Russia and China were beginning to sort of move apart? So, he seized on the opportunity to open up China, and the opportunities there in some ways to sort of hold back the Soviet Union.
You're absolutely correct. And it was a way of the triangulation between the three countries and pulling them from that relationship with the Soviet Union.
As you look at, it's so fascinating to look at it through the different lens of time, to look at it, his personal life. I listened to your book on audio tape, by the way. I got it on Amazon. But, it's interesting to look, at his connection to California. Of course, we had a second president from California, Ronald Reagan.
Well, and Ronald Reagan really was under his tutelage. He went from being a Truman Democrat in 1948 to really a Nixon Republican by 1964. And so much of the policies that Richard Nixon brought, EPA, clean water, clean air, that was from his youth growing up in Southern California. And they weren't transactional political moves. They were firm beliefs he had from his growing up.
Paul Carter, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It was great to see you.
Coming up, I'm going to show you a video, and you tell me if this is you when the record continues after this.